The countryside house stood silent and imposing, surrounded by fields that stretched out into the darkness. It was the sort of place where the night held its breath, and every creak and rustle seemed amplified. Inside, Sarah sat alone, her eyes darting nervously around the dimly lit room. The wind howled outside, and the ancient oak trees cast eerie shadows on the walls. Sarah had always found comfort in this house, but tonight, it felt like a prison. She had been alone for days, her husband away on a business trip, and the isolation was beginning to take its toll. A rustling sound from the hallway snapped her attention to the door. Her heart lurched as the thought crossed her mind. Had she locked all the doors and windows? She couldn't be sure anymore. The creeping unease in her gut intensified. Another noise, closer this time, sent a shiver down her spine. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone's fingernail against glass. Sarah's breath quickened as she tiptoed towards the hallway, her heart pounding in her chest. In the dim light, she saw the silhouette of a figure outside the window, their face obscured by the curtain. Panic surged through her as she realized that someone was lurking outside her home, watching her. The tapping continued, growing louder and more insistent. Sarah's mind raced. She had to hide. She slipped into the nearest room, a small storage closet, and closed the door behind her. Her heart pounded in her chest, and she pressed a hand to her mouth to stifle her breathing. She could hear the intruder moving through the house, their footsteps slow and deliberate. Minutes dragged on like hours as Sarah huddled in the darkness of the closet. She strained her ears to catch any clue about the intruder's intentions, but all she could hear were whispers, faint and incomprehensible, like the murmurs of restless spirits. The house itself seemed to come alive, its walls groaning and shifting as if they held secrets of their own. Sarah's nerves were stretched to the breaking point. She had to get out of there, but how? Suddenly, the closet door creaked open, and Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. A shadowy figure stood before her, their features hidden in the dim light. A voice whispered, low and menacing.
I've been watching you, Sarah.
Tears welled up in her eyes as she tried to comprehend the situation. How had this person known her name? What did they want from her? The intruder stepped closer, and Sarah's fear intensified. She could smell their foul breath like decay and mold. Her heart threatened to escape her chest as she realized that there was no way out. But then, in the midst of her terror, something strange happened. The intruder began to tremble, their form wavering like a mirage. Sarah blinked in disbelief as the figure before her seemed to unravel, its edges fading into nothingness. In an instant, the intruder had vanished, leaving Sarah alone in the closet. She stepped cautiously into the hallway, her heart still racing. Had it all been a hallucination? A trick of her fear-addled mind? As she moved through the house, checking every room, she found no sign of the intruder. The windows and doors were all locked from the inside, just as she had left them. There was no way anyone could have entered or exited the house. Sarah sat down on the living room couch, her mind reeling. What had just happened? Was it a ghost? A figment of her imagination? Or something else entirely? She couldn't make sense of it. As the first light of dawn broke through the curtains, Sarah's husband returned home, finding her pale and shaken. She recounted the harrowing events of the night, but he dismissed them as the product of her imagination, a nightmare born from her loneliness and fear. Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something had been in the house with her, something beyond her understanding. She knew what she had seen and heard, and it was all too real. Weeks turned into months, and Sarah tried to put the incident behind her. Life returned to normal, and the memory of that terrifying night began to fade. But then, one evening, as she sat alone in the living room, she heard it again, the soft, rhythmic tapping against the window. Her heart skipped a beat as she turned to look, and there, outside the window, was the shadowy figure, its face hidden by the curtain and its eyes fixed on her. But this time, it was no hallucination. As the figure slowly raised its hand to tap against the glass, Sarah realized the horrifying truth. It was her own reflection, distorted by the dim light and her own fear. In that moment, the world spun on its axis and Sarah's reality shattered. The intruder had been her own reflection, her own shadow, amplified and twisted by her paranoia. She had been the source of her own terror all along, trapped in a cycle of fear that had turned her world upside down. As she gazed at her distorted reflection, Sarah knew that the true horror had always been within her own mind.